Hello, everybody. Welcome. Happy Wednesday. Oh my goodness, it's already Wednesday. Um, just for notes, if you all have updated your Zoom, you should have, or I don't know if you can see it already, but there should be a live captioning happening. But if you don't see it there at the bottom, there should be a live captioning option if you updated your Zoom recently. Um, yeah. All right. I see Christy sees it. There we go. There we go. Um, Good afternoon, everybody. Hi, I'm Kaz Salamanca. I don't know if you can see me. Actually, let me spotlight myself. Boom, there I am. Hello, hello. Um, good afternoon. I'm Kaz Salamanca. You see him, his pronouns, and I am the director for the Asian American Pacific Islander Resource Center here at, well, not here, but like at UC Santa Cruz. Hope everyone's doing good. Welcome, welcome. It's good to see some familiar faces and some new faces, and some new names on screen. Hello. Yes, go Slugs. Thanks, Jen. So yeah, we are here today to present you all with a session in coordination with Career Success and UC Santa Cruz's Alumni Engagement. We titled it Network It, Building Professional Community as part of the Communities of Color Career Series. So if you all are familiar or have been are familiar with the 4C, the Communities of Color Career Conference, this is the virtual version of it. Again, I'm Kaz Salamanca, director for AAPIRC. And I wanted to kick it off by starting with a land acknowledgement, and then I'll introduce some of the staff and then pass it off. So let's see. Okay, so the land on which we gather is the unceded territory of the Waswas speaking UP tribe. The Amamutsan tribal band comprised of the descendants of indigenous people taken to Missions Santa Cruz and San Juan Bautista during Spanish colonization of the Central Coast is today working hard to restore traditional stewardship practices on these lands and heal from historical trauma. And with that, I will, first I want to introduce folks that we've been working closely with. First one is Taylor. If you can give a wave, Taylor, I'm gonna spotlight you real quick. Taylor is from Career Success team. And boom. And then we have Rhonda from Alumni Engagement, who's helped us connect with the alumni who are working, who are speaking with y'all today. And then we have a wonderful AAPIRC, one more, Valerie Garcia, intern for the Career Success team, who helped coordinate the 3CS for you all. There's Valerie right there. All right, and I'm going to pass it off to Angie Yang, who is one of the AAPIRC interns who will be facilitating the workshop today. So Angie, take it away.
Sweet, thanks, Kaz. So before we jump into the conversation with our panelists, we'd like to get a temperature check from our audience. Y'all should see a poll pop up on your screen soon, and feel free to choose all of the above on how you perceive the word networking. Sweet. I think almost everyone is in right now, and we're seeing a lot of building connections as the number one being associated with the word networking, a lot of LinkedIn, but more email and phone, okay, and a little bit of Twitch. That's cool. It's cool to see what y'all think of when you hear the word networking. So now that we kind of have a better understanding of what the general consensus is regarding the word networking, we'll invite you all into a breakout room with 2 other people to introduce yourselves. moving the poll out of my way, to introduce yourselves. And if you feel comfortable, we'd invite you to share your name, pronouns, major, year, interest, and what your understanding of networking is, and maybe what you hope to take away from the conversation today. So when you see those breakout rooms pop up, feel free to hop into them.
And if you're having trouble accessing the room, please let us know. We can help send you to one.
Hi, I just joined, so I'm not sure if I got assigned to a breakout room.
I think I just got you.
Sweet, it looks like everyone is back. Welcome back from your breakout rooms and congratulations. You have all learned the first step of networking and I hope that you're able to meet a few new faces in doing so. So before we jump into our discussion with our lovely panelists, I'd like to take a few minutes to contextualize our conversation for today. So networking, like everything else in the professional world, inadvertently holds barriers for queer, Black, Indigenous people of color. The process of networking might bring up the need to code switch, conversations might feel performative, and you might have major imposter syndrome, but that's not how it has to be. Through our conversation today, we'll be able to learn from our fantastic panelists and together deconstruct the idea of networking into examples and tools that you'll be able to use. So moving along, let me introduce you all to our lovely panelists for today. First, we have April Yee, who worked in private equity industry for about 10 years, being based in San Francisco and New York City. After undergoing emergency surgery, which saved her life in 2015, April now works part-time as a holistic life coach focusing on well-being and self-care. April holds a BA in psychology, a BA in American Studies, and a minor in communications and rhetoric from UC Santa Cruz. She serves on the board of president for Kid Power International and is the VP of finance for the UCSC Alumni Council and is on the board for 2 other nonprofits. In her free time, April enjoys reading, writing, learning, and connecting. We're also joined by Ken Chang. Ken holds an MA in theater arts with an emphasis in acting. His interest in acting originated from his belief that acting can help you become a better person or a better version of yourself by allowing you to empathize with other people from all walks of life. In this same light, he has been working on identifying and restructuring his paradigms to allow himself to be the best version possible. He believes that if everyone continues to strive to be the best possible version of themselves, then the world would be a better place. Some projects he's currently working on are becoming a realtor, tax preparer, and lawyer, and he's in the process of starting a film production company. How cool. We're also joined by Jennifer Turai. Jennifer is a leadership development specialist with the Center of Excellence in Nonprofits, where she provides consultation, coaching, and facilitates learning for nonprofit leaders across the nation. She's a co-founder of Asian Women Empowered, a group that fosters civic engagement and leadership in Silicon Valley. Jennifer's experience with education and nonprofits ranges from being the director of learning and member engagement of the Silicon Valley Council of Nonprofits to overseeing autism services in Alameda and Contra Costa counties. She has also organized a community conversation with the Milpitas Community Empowerment Educational Endowment to address diversity and inclusion issues within the school district, and was a community educator in Silicon Valley's Asian American Voices projects. So these are the wonderful panelists we'll be joined by today. If y'all want to wave, I'm sure your videos are already spotlighted, and we'll just kind of jump straight into the panel Q&A we have. So starting off, our first question is in regards to code switching. The definition of code switching per dictionary.com means the modifying of one's behavior, appearance, etc., to adapt to different social cultural norms. And for many BIPOC folks, how you perform can be based on who is in the room. So the question is, how have you navigated finding authenticity in your voice in the professional space? And how does that affect you and how you network? And I'll start off that question with April.
Thanks, Angie. So first of all, I'm really happy to be here today, and I feel inspired seeing so many of you being here and engaged in your education by participating in these 3C series events. So I think to answer this question, I think this can be challenging when you first start out due to a lack of experiencing yourself in these various situations. And I can tell you about all the situations I've been in where I felt awkward and self-conscious, but telling you about them won't necessarily keep you from feeling awkward and self-conscious yourself when you find yourself in these situations. And I think what helps you find your voice and authenticity includes a few things. Curiosity about people and things, having a sense of what you value and what's important to you when you're connecting with people, and practice, and especially practice. So practice being in varying situations that stretch your boundaries and give you the experience of expressing yourself in different ways with different people and groups of people. And until you know what feels uncomfortable for you, you won't know how to adjust in order to feel more comfortable in situations. And I think when you know what you value and what's important to you when connecting, it can create a sense of confidence and self-esteem. And I think practice is important. And for some reason, we can sometimes think that we should just know how to do something well without ever having done it. And I want to emphasize the role of practicing here. If someone seems like a natural doing anything, I think it's safe to say that it's because they've practiced, and they've practiced a lot. And so with networking and building community with people, you may not get to practice beforehand, but practice comes in the form of doing it, engaging yourself and putting yourself out there and seeing what feels right for you in different situations. And from that doing, you'll get practice and become familiar with who you enjoy being with others and how you like showing up. And so now when I'm in a situation to network or build community, I use my natural curiosity to find commonality with people I talk to. And also being a holistic life coach that focuses on self-care usually resonates with people, and then it has them asking questions of me. And now I've been in enough situations where I know myself well enough and I feel comfortable showing up authentically as me while still making small adjustments to connect and engage with people as I see fit. And I think what really helped me build these skills initially was when I was at UC Santa Cruz and my participation in student orgs and with AAPIRC. I was actually one of the first students to work at AAPIRC when it was established in 1999. And I think some of you might not even have been born yet, but definitely working with student orgs and with AAPIRC helped me to experience what networking and building community feels like.
Sweet, thanks, April. I really love how you connected the question not only to your work now, but also like pointed it out throughout your journey. I'm gonna bounce that same question over to you, Ken.
Thank you, April, for sharing that. I definitely agree a lot with what April said. Um, and I think to add on to what she said is knowing who you are in terms of your identity, but also your values and your principles, your beliefs and your paradigms. Because if you don't know who you are, it's very easy to let others like shape you and mold you. And that's what I struggled with when I was in UC Santa Cruz. So I was a theater arts major that didn't know much about theater, right? So that was funny. And I'm joining these groups of professionals who know a lot more about theater. So I felt like, oh, okay, like I should do this. Yeah, this is cool. Yeah, okay. And you kind of get sucked into what everyone wants you to be. And that was a tricky slope for me because I wasn't happy, but I didn't realize why I wasn't happy because I didn't know who I was. So knowing who you are and why you are the way you are, right? The different paradigms is a very crucial thing to figuring out how to be authentic in a professional space because believe it or not, in theater, there is not colorblind casting, right? I am the typical role of, an uncle or a maid, a busboy or whatever. I never was the leading man, right? Leading man is like the guy on the white horse that comes saves the girl or whatever. And that was challenging for me, but that's why I decided to start my own film company because I realized that there wasn't that platform for me or there wasn't enough, right? So half and half is exactly what April is saying, but also you have to understand that if the door's not there, build it, right? Don't be afraid to be like, hey, this doesn't fit with what I believe in. And I feel this is right and this is truthful to me. So you know what? Respectfully, I won't work with you and I'll create something that works for me. And that's okay, right? And that's part of networking because you'll find people out there, 10 people that you talk to will tell you no, but the 11th person might say, you know what? I like what you say. I'll support you. How can I work with you? And that's okay, right? Um, and the hardest thing too is because you're still in your beginning phase of your career, you want to kind of sell your soul a little bit, right? Because I did that. You kind of like, oh yeah, I'll do that. Yeah, I'll stand here, I'll be this guy. And then like you sit at home and you're like, wait, why am I getting the short end of the stick, right? Like you have a one-on-one talk in the mirror, like, this is not what I signed up for. And then you have to find the courage inside to kind of tell yourself, okay, I won't do this anymore. I'm more valuable than this. And that comes with growth and practice, like April says, and comes with knowing who you are. And you're not going to get it right the first time, and just be okay with that, and if you know who you are, it's easier to be authentic because that's who you need to be all the time. You don't need to switch on different hats, right? I'm not the thing I have that I want to share is I'm different ethnicity depending on which group I go into, right? Some people think I'm Filipino, some people say I'm Vietnamese, some people say I'm Hmong, some people say I'm Chinese, some people say you're just a Asian, right? And yeah, I'm just the Asian. So just know that people perceive you differently and don't take immediate offense to it because sometimes it might just be their lack of education or awareness, and that's okay. Um, and then that goes back to being authentic to yourself, right? If that really bothers you, tell them that and say, hey, that really bothered me, but actually I am Chinese and I'm not Filipino or I'm not Hmong, right? But then you also weigh it out. Like, do you go win the battle and lose the war, or do you win the war and lose the battle, right? And this is all different for everyone. Everyone in this room has different perspective to it. April has a different perspective. Jennifer has a different perspective, and it's what you're comfortable with. There's not a one size shoe fit all. And keep stressing the point. Just be what you are comfortable with, right? Whatever I'm saying, just take it that works for you, and whatever don't work for you, just throw it to the side, right? And then going back to what April was kind of touching on, but I'll elaborate a little bit more. to stay authentic to myself, I spend a lot of time alone, not like a loner type, but just being with myself in my thoughts, meditation, journaling, writing, like doing things by yourself. Because how do you learn about yourself if you never spend time with yourself? If you're always next to someone, like you never have no downtime, you know? And do things that frustrate you, right? Like if you're always doing things that are easy, you never learn your boundaries, right? Like kind of what April talks about. Like you need to do things that frustrate you. Like if you hate doing something, ask yourself, why do you hate doing that? And do it. And it's like, oh, like an example is I hated reading books when I was growing up because English was my second language and no one around me read books and books was really hard for me. But then I was like, oh, okay, and I spent a lot of energy avoiding reading books. And the amount of energy I spent avoiding reading books, I shifted it and embraced books. And now I love books. So it's just easy as like a switch. It's like a light switch, you know? I know it's like this big old thing in your head, but it's easy. Just switch it. And then keep learning, right? Keep learning about yourself, keep learning new things, because then you could kind of figure out who you are and what you like. And yeah, just be yourself, be authentic. I don't know, I'm kind of all over the place, but if you want to ask any question, you can ask me later.
Thanks, Ken. Super appreciate everything you just shared. You're already being quoted in the chat. Passing the same question right along to you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Angie. And thanks to everybody who's here today. I think it's so fun to be with a bunch of slugs. I love it. This is my little slug right here. So I definitely want to echo what April and Ken both said. I know April is talking about be curious, and Ken is talking about know yourself. And I think those two things combined are what really helped me to figure out like who am I in these different spaces? Who are my people in these different spaces? And I think if there's one thing that I would say helps me the most in navigating different professional spaces, it's a combination. Well, I said one thing, but it's a combination of those three things. And I think they're all, so basically, like I started out not really knowing what I could do in the space that I was in. So I'm a professional social worker by training. And as I started out, I felt like I wanted to change the world. I just didn't know how, you know? So as I started doing work directly with clients, with other social workers, I started trying to figure out, well, what is my role here? How do I make an impact on the community that I'm trying to serve? And I think that people could recognize my passion just by the comments that I would make, or you know, the things that I would share with coworkers. And then I started figuring out like, okay, I have people who are experiencing the same things that I'm experiencing. Maybe they're attending the same meetings that I'm attending. Maybe I can trust them to ask them like, hey, you know, I'm in this meeting space. I just said something that I think might sound really crazy or might sound really stupid, you know, and I learned who I could ask, like, hey, did that sound crazy? Did that sound stupid? Should I have said that differently? You know, but it took me some time to figure out who are the people that I could rely on to trust. They would give me real feedback and not just be nice and say, oh no, you were fine, you know? And so I think as you go out into the professional world, that curiosity will not only allow you to get to know other people who are, you know, in that space, but it also helps you figure out like who you want to be in that space. How do you want to show up? You know, who are you really authentically? What are your interests? What are you passionate about? And then, you know, you start meeting people who, like, I have friends who I still talk to from my MSW program, because, you know, going through that training together, experiencing things out in the, you know, in our internships even together, you start to get to know what kind of support you need, what makes you feel like you can do your job well, that you know what you're talking about. And then running that by those your people, the people that you trust, the people that you feel actually get you. I feel like it helps you to become more confident when you step out into those different spaces, because then you can every time you go into a new experience, you have a stronger understanding of who you are, what you know, where your expertise is, where your passions are, what you want to know more about. And then you feel more confident just putting yourself out there and building that network. And whether it's somebody who goes into that category of these are my people, or somebody who goes into the category of maybe not my people, but I might be able to learn something from them, you start to figure those things out. And so, I've had to meet with people from all kinds of communities, whether it's, clients who might not have a lot of the privileges that I have, or really wealthy donors for nonprofits who have a lot more privilege than I have. And I've had to learn how to be able to navigate the spaces well in order to do my job well. And I'll tell you, it was really scary at first. I felt like I had to be really smart looking to show up at my client's house, or really like professional to show up with like a donor, a potential donor. But over time, I've learned how to not put those expectations on myself that I need to look and act a certain way, but rather be confident in what I know, be confident that I've been chosen to go into the situation for a reason. I've been invited into the space for what I can contribute. And, whatever the outcome is that I'm trying to achieve, it might or might not happen, and that's okay. It's a learning experience. And so really not being upset with yourself when you feel like you haven't done well, and then being able to check in with those people, your people, to help reground you at the end of the day, I think have been really important for me.
Sweet, thanks, Jennifer. Also, I just want to comment, the quality of your video is so amazing. I don't know if anyone else is noticing it, but I'm seeing Jennifer in HD. So moving on to our next question. This is kind of a topic all of y'all have already identified in the previous question, but imposter syndrome is this phenomenon often associated with like professional spaces, whether that be within the workplace or academic spaces. And imposter syndrome is defined as a collection of feelings of inadequacy that persist despite evident success. So imposters suffer from self-doubt, a lack of, and like feeling like you have a lack of intelligence, feeling like you're a fraud, and these feelings override any other feelings of success or external proof of your competence. So the question is, how have you experienced imposter syndrome, and what spaces or situations were you in, and what would you have done differently in the moment looking now backwards? And also just slapping another question onto that, who or what resources have helped you navigate through imposter syndrome? So we're gonna start this one off with you, Ken.
Okay. So Jennifer touched on this a little bit, but essentially, well, first off, let me say this. I think I definitely suffered from and still suffer from imposter syndrome. And I think that might be from my childhood, because most Asian parents are really like pushy with academics. And if you get an A, it's not enough. You need like an A plus. And if you get an A plus, you need college courses. So there's always this lack of inadequacy, this comparison, right? And I think that Jennifer hit it right on the nail, right? You were chosen for a specific reason, right? Not because of any other reason that you might think of, but more so for you're qualified. You have the credentials, right? Something you said resonated with them, and they're like, hey, that person there, I want them to work with me or work with them, right? And trusting in that. I think that in terms of holistic approach, what April was mentioning, one thing that I use is whenever I have these like kind of, I call them negative thoughts, right? I kind of take a deep breath, center myself, and take 3 deep breaths. And then I rewire that, right? And I was like, okay, I feel the imposter syndrome, or maybe it doesn't come off as imposter syndrome. Maybe it's like, hey, I feel like I'm not adequate enough. These people are much more adequate than me, right? And that's your self-talk. No one is saying that. It's all in your head. So taking that 3 deep breaths or 10 or whatever you need, right? To ground yourself and say, hey, I'm here for a reason. Everything I need is within me. I can move past this movement. I'm my biggest obstacle. I was chosen for a reason, and trust in that, right? And to dovetail off that, something that has helped me is waking up in the morning and taking the first 10, 15 minutes of my day and having positive self-talk, positive affirmations, being showing gratitude for what I do have, right? When you set yourself up, you go on a positive trajectory, right? You don't want to wake up and like, oh, this is not enough, this is not enough, and then you just start to go downwards, right? So there's these mental individual things that you can do, and this is something I learned on my own, right? Going back to our earlier question, learning and self-help and knowing who you are, right? But an example that I work with this, here's a real life example, right? So I did my MA at UC Santa Cruz, and out of all the people that were accepted, I was the only one that did not receive 3 TA ships. So 3 TA ships are like TA jobs that you receive to have your tuition covered. It's, you want TA ships essentially, right? I was the only one that received 1 and not 3. Everyone received 3. So you could understand how that made me feel. First generation to go to college, right? I think I was probably the only male that was not, that was a minority. And so I didn't have the TA ship. So here I'm feeling like, okay, why that messed with my head, right? Then I'm like, wait a minute. It might not have anything to do with me. It may have been something else. So this is what I did. I went up to the dean's office, the person that was in charge, and stated my claim. And they said, no, we don't have enough money. We don't have enough room. That's what they told me. So I said, okay. So I went to talk to 2 professors that I know. I said, hey, do you need a TA? You know, and they say, yes, I do. I say, okay, if I say that you need a TA and they ask me who, will you support me? Yes, we will. I did that. And look, I got 3 TA ships. So that was nothing to do with me, and they had their reasons, and I don't know what the reasons were, but all I'm saying was I was qualified. For some reason, I just only received 1 TA ship. So I could have panicked right there and quit the program, but I didn't. And I think that trusting in yourself more so and not being so hard on yourself, which is what I constantly do, is key, because you have a lot more in here than you think you do, right? Like when you really go down low and then there's nothing else and you have to pull all this out, right? That's where this comes from, right? It doesn't come from out there. There's no magic hand that pulls you out. It's all you. You have to like put on like your I don't know, your thick skin and just climb out the hole, right? That's what you need to do. And that's partly with dealing with who you are authentically, but also dealing with the imposter syndrome. Because whatever I say to you right now, there's going to be a time you're going to struggle with this, and you have to figure it out on your own, right? April could say something to you, Jennifer could say something to you, but if you don't apply it or you don't use it, it goes out the window. So that's my tidbit for imposter syndrome. Like I'm suffering from it. And can I be honest? Like when we were reading the bios of April and Jennifer, I was like,
Absolutely. Thank you, Ken, for sharing your words. Passing the same question now over to you, Jennifer. How do you navigate imposter syndrome?
Oh man, I still get imposter syndrome. I was feeling it like 2 days ago for real. So I don't know, how long have I been working? I think I've been working since I was 13 years old. So I've had a job like this whole time, but you know, to this day, I sometimes feel like, I don't know, am I the right person for this? And I wish I had like a little mini Ken in my head telling me, no, you got this, you got this. But I will say that time I was referencing as a social worker, when I started working with clients, literally what I did was I wore my glasses because I thought I would look smarter when I went to go meet with this family for the first time. I was so focused on trying to be like the professional and the expert or whatever I thought I was trying to be. And I had like an hour and a half meeting with this family who just really needed support from me as a social worker. And what I realized after that meeting was it didn't matter how I walked in there with them, as long as I was genuinely curious about who they were, what their needs were, and serious about my job. You know, I was hired for that job because I had the training, I had the experience, I had the knowledge that could really support that family in getting what they needed. And it took me, you know, experiences like that to just kind of be easier on myself. But, you know, once you continue, or when you continue to advance in your career, I feel like that imposter syndrome game just gets stepped up as along with your professional game. And so I know you mentioned in my bio, Angie, that I was the first director of training over at the Silicon Valley Council of Nonprofits. And, you know, I'll tell you, when I joined that team, I saw that team, like they're known in the community as like a group of badass women. You know, so I was like, oh my gosh, I'm joining this team. They picked me to be a director. Hold on a second, like that level. And so I get into the job and, you know, my boss tells me to do X, Y, Z. And I start feeling like, I don't know if I'm the right person to do this. And so I was real honest with my boss. I was like, I don't know if I can do this. And she looked me straight in the eye. She's a very powerful woman. Oh my God, she looked me straight in the eye. She's like, I picked you for a reason. I picked you because I know that you can do this job. And I was like, oh shit. Oh, can we, I'm sorry. But that's how I felt. I was like, holy shit. She picked me for a reason. And I had to like knock myself in the head and be like, you know, it's true. You know, the stuff on my resume, I didn't make that up. My experience, I didn't make that up. Everything that I learned and understood over the years, like, I know that that's real. And I had to remind myself, like, you really were picked because of who you are, what you know. And it's just something that I feel like I have to constantly remind myself. You know, like I said, just a couple days ago, I totally felt it. Engaging in race equity work is something that I feel is such a big undertaking that not one person can do by themselves. And I was asked to do some really important work, and I was sitting here feeling like, I don't know if I can do this. And then I realized, like, you know, I don't know if anyone who does this work well will ever feel like an expert. And it's okay if I don't know everything. What I do know is what I can contribute. And what I do know is how to help people in their own journeys. And so it's that self-talk that Ken was talking about. You know, you have to be able to remind yourself of who you are and what you know, and just remember that what you've experienced is real. So that's what helps me get through my imposter syndrome days.
Thank you, Jennifer. And now finally passing it over to you, April. What do you do to navigate imposter syndrome?
Yeah, well, first I can relate to what Ken and Jennifer said. I still feel it sometimes too, being a coach. Excuse me. I guess a story that I'll share is that I started out at my old company, which was a private equity firm, as the receptionist when I was 23. And I was the receptionist for about 6 months. And then the marketing manager asked me to join her team as an administrator. And then I became an analyst a year later. And for a long time, even after I became an analyst and even after I was promoted a couple more times, I kept thinking that my other colleagues continued to think of me as the receptionist. And this was my own mind chatter, assuming what was going on in other people's heads. And it wasn't necessarily true about how others really saw me or even how they treated me. But I think I didn't have the confidence back then to really step into my role and own what I was doing, own what I knew, and own all the experience I had gained after working in the company for a few years. And it probably wasn't until my 5th or 6th year that I started to own my role and to let go of that mind chatter about being the receptionist. And I knew that I was a valuable team member who contributed my resourcefulness and all the knowledge I had gained at the company. And I know my team members also recognize that. And also I looked young for my age and sometimes thought that some of my older clients didn't take me seriously. So for me, I had to make sure I knew the data and information that I was presenting. And that required me to be really present at my work, and to understand how I was contributing in my role and what the information was that I was working with. And I used to try to know everything, but I realized that clients and even other colleagues of mine would prefer that when I wasn't certain about something, that I could say, I'll look into it and find out for sure about this, rather than to give maybe a wrong or inaccurate answer. But I had that fear of like not knowing and thinking that I needed to know. And I think Jennifer and Ken both touched on this. And what helps me is that it's important for me to remind myself of the fact that I am here because I add value and perspective that comes from being who I am. And no one else is exactly like me. And I have valuable knowledge and experience about things that others do not have in exactly the same way that I do. And that is how I contribute as myself. And I think both Ken and Jennifer talked about self-talk, and I call it mind chatter. And so mind chatter and our own thoughts are really like the only things we can manage fully. So like everything external, we can't control other people, we can't control situations and what happens in the world, but we can manage our own thoughts. And I think by managing our thoughts, that leads to different feelings that we might feel. And then if we're feeling a certain way, we might take an action based on that feeling. And then we'll get results based on those actions. So I think it's really important to be able to recognize when your thoughts or your mind chatter are kind of like going off and exploding, and to kind of rein that in and, tell yourself like, I'm here because I matter, I'm valuable, and I have experience and perspective to contribute.
Thanks, April. And I love how all of y'all have mentioned like affirmations, self-affirmations as something that has helped you get through your imposter syndrome. And now looking into the chat, I just want to really quickly shout out some affirmations for all three of y'all that people have thrown in the chat. We have Naomi saying Ken is a genius. We have Lindsay saying, as someone who experiences imposter syndrome too, it's so affirming just to hear y'all, parentheses, successful, professional people of color, speaking on the subject and how you navigate these moments. Thank you. And we also have Vanessa quoting April as an affirmation they're adding to themselves is, I add value. So I love how y'all are shouting out those affirmations and sharing affirmations with our panelists. So now, thank you for sharing your insights and experiences. We're going to close out with our last pre-prepared question of, what is a tip, trick, or recommendation that you've learned throughout your career journey regarding networking that you'd like to share with our audience today? And this time we'll start with you, Jennifer.
So I talked about my peoples a few times. When I got really into like this crazy community of nonprofit folks in the South Bay, I had somebody who's a really good friend say to me, you need to have a kitchen cabinet. And I don't know if any of you have heard of kitchen cabinets before, but it's basically like a group of people who you really do trust, but who also understand the work that you're doing and the people that you're dealing with. So I do have a pretty tight group of, I'd say like 5 or 6 women who work with the same community that I work with. By community, I mean like professional folks that I have to work with. And, I can go to them and be like, hey, I have this meeting coming up with so-and-so. What do we know about them? Do we like them? Do I trust that person? I often ask like, do we like this person or not? And, how do I work with that person? But without that kind of kitchen cabinet group of folks, I don't know how I would navigate the professional community that I work with as well. But it's very important, I think, to think about who could be in your kitchen cabinet. Because not only, like, I have a best friend who I trust with everything, but I wouldn't necessarily say she's in my kitchen cabinet because she doesn't work with all the folks that I work with, right? And so they have to be people that you trust, that you get along well with, who understand what you deal with on a daily basis, and who you think make good decisions. Because if you're asking them for advice, you want to be sure that you could follow their advice. You don't want to just have anyone in your kitchen cabinet. But that would be my biggest recommendation to anyone going out into the professional world.
Sweet, thanks, Jennifer. I've also heard it as find your personal board of directors. So kind of on the same token of what you mentioned. We're gonna pass that same question now over to you, April. What is your tip, trick, or recommendation?
Yeah, I love that kitchen cabinet resource as well. I think for me, in the past, when I've gone to conferences and networking events and in person, the organizers usually provide ahead of time a list of attendees and the organizations or companies that they're with, and usually their job title. And so I'll look for a few people on the list beforehand that I want to connect with on something specific. Like in the past, it was a client we had in common, or if they worked at an organization I wanted to get to know better. Then I could look, when I got to the event, then I could look specifically for these people by their name tags, or I could even go up to someone else who seems to be standing alone, introduce myself politely, look at their name tag and see what organization or company they're with. And if it's not familiar to me, I can ask them what it's like to work there or what they like about their role. And if it is familiar to me, I can mention something relevant that I know about their company and ask a question about that. And it's okay if that person doesn't know the answer or doesn't know, but at least I've engaged them and the conversation might continue from there for a bit. And then when the conversation winds down, I could say something like, by the way, do you know if so-and-so is here? Have you seen them? I wanted to make sure I could like catch them before they leave. And if they haven't seen that person or don't know who it is, I just thank them and politely and say it was nice talking to them, and end with something like, if you happen to bump into so-and-so, can you let them know that April Yee, and then I would mention my company name, is looking for them. And that way you've met a new person and also might get help finding the people you wanted to connect with in the first place. So that's like a quick tip about in-person networking at conferences and events. And I think in general, as a tip, I think curiosity can do a lot of the heavy lifting once you start talking with someone. And it's not like you're interrogating someone, but you're really being present and listening to the person you're talking to and hearing what they're saying. And curiosity naturally leads to an interest in what you hear and wanting to find out more. And you can also find places in conversations to share an experience of yours if it seems relevant to what the other person has said. And usually the other person will reciprocate and ask about you as well. But sometimes it's easier for someone to talk about themselves and what they do, and that's okay. And if it's someone you'd like to stay in touch with, let them know and exchange information. And you can say something like, I really enjoyed hearing about blah, 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 and make it something like very specific that they shared with you. And I think that creates a sense of acknowledgement for that person, that you were really listening to them and that they were heard. And I think that, helps you stay in people's minds just by doing that.
Sweet, thanks, April. I'm definitely gonna steal some of your words and write them as a script to use in the future. We're gonna bounce that question finally over to you, Ken. What is your tip, trick, or recommendation that you've learned that you'd like to share with our audience?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Jennifer and April both have awesome recommendations. If I had to pick a recommendation to give to y'all, I would say seize the moment, right? And when I say seize the moment, what it really boils down to is you have to treat it like it's the last time you ever see this person or last moment, right? Don't just say, hey, I'll see them tomorrow, or, oh, I'll see them next year, right? Like, you don't know. Like right now we have this moment, and not to sound like grim, but not tomorrow's never promised, right? So you don't know what will happen, and you want to take advantage of this moment. And one thing to kind of visualize is, if you never ask, the answer is always no. But if you ask, there's a 50% it might be a yes. So you're actually increasing your odds if you ask the question, right? And the worst you could say is no, which is where you're at if you didn't ask. So ask away, right? And I want to share a little tidbit about that, because when I transferred to UC Santa Cruz, there was an individual I met, and I said, hey, my name is Ken. I'm really interested in theater. That's my major. He saw a Facebook post that led me to AAPIRC, where I met Nancy Kim. And she directed me to Stevenson Event Center, where I was auditioning for Rainbow Theater with Don Williams. And then that spiraled into me working with El Teatro Campesino and Luis Valdez in San Juan Bautista. And then that spiraled me into working in San Francisco on that film, that San Andreas film with The Rock, The Whole World is Going Down. So it's you just never know, right? Like if I'd never asked that person, if I never went to the audition, then I wouldn't have all that great experience, right? And you also have to be realistic with yourself that even if you go and do these things, it might amount to nothing. Like, don't have so high expectation, like, oh, I need to get a job at the end of this. No, like, it's an experience. Be in the moment, and you're learning what you're learning, and you're learning what you're supposed to learning, and just be like thankful that you had that experience, right? And and on top of that, it's about your work ethic, right? Just really have that strong work ethic where you actually deliver what you say you will deliver, right? If you tell someone, hey, I'm willing to learn, I don't know much about it, well, actually say that and do that. Don't say that, and then when it comes time to actually do something, they're like, oh, did you do it? Oh no, I totally forgot about it. That's like that's a big no, right? But also, if you know about something that you're talking to someone about, like a topic, share that. If you're intelligent and you're well versed in that area, share that, right? Like, don't not sell your soul, but like, oh yeah, I know a lot about X, Y, and Z, and this is what I know. They were like, oh my goodness, here's my business card. Call me in a week, right? You just never know. And you just have to have a little bit of a hustle and bustle about yourself, especially for my background in like the arts. Like, you got to go out there and sink your teeth on the cement and just, you just have to go out there, right? And I think that's a lot about to say about life, right? It's not about sitting at home wishing on a star, and then the lottery ticket just drops down, and it like, that's the movies, right? That's not realistic. Does it happen? Maybe. I haven't seen it, but maybe. But what has worked for me is just being authentic in all facets of your life, and going after your goals to make these dreams into reality, and just staying humble, right? Always stay humble. Like, don't have your nose so high like Pinocchio where you don't even know where you're stepping on, right? You just got to stay humble, because you never know who's going to help you in the future. And with that being said, like, if you follow the things that we share with you, like, your endeavors is just right in front of you. You just have to go and like, go get it.
Yay, thank you, Ken. All right, so we have come to the end of our pre-prepared panel question. At this point, we have about 10 minutes. We'd love to open up the conversation to everyone in the audience. If y'all have any questions for our panelists, feel free to throw them in the chat, or I also invite y'all to use the raise hand feature. And once I see hands popping through, I'll invite y'all to turn your camera and mic on to ask the questions yourself. I also know that there are some, oh, I hear someone, go for it.
Hi, I was wondering, like, how can I maintain those network, like those relationships, how to continue them?
I'll jump in. I was sharing with two people in my breakout room earlier today that when you do talk to someone and you're really listening and you hear, something that they said, and maybe and you both want to keep in touch. If something you come across, like it's a book title that maybe relates to some topic that that person shared with you, you can say, hey, I saw this book and I thought of you, I just wanted to pass it along, you might be interested in reading it. Something like that, like something even like a small connection like that will keep you connected, and that person will be like delighted that you remembered what they said, and it'll keep, it's an acknowledgement that you're really listening and that you're interested in really staying connected to that person.
I think something that I've done in the past, and it depends on, I guess, the kind of work that you're doing. But when I meet somebody and we both agree, like we need to stay connected, sometimes we'll schedule like a half hour or an hour. Like back when it was pre-pandemic, we'd have coffee here and there. But I think it's a matter of being conscious of who you want to stay connected with and how you can stay connected with people. I know like I'll exchange text messages with certain people, and we might send each other messages on LinkedIn or even something like Facebook or Instagram to like connect with someone there. And if you feel compelled, like if you really feel a connection with the person, it's not hard, right? You'll want to just stay connected with them. I think if you're trying to be strategic about like those professional connections, that's where those scheduled meetups might come in handy. Like I have a 30-minute Zoom with somebody who I'm connected with professionally tomorrow, just so that we can continue staying connected, because there's no other reason for us to see each other right now since we're all sheltering. Well, actually, we're not really sheltering in place technically anymore. I don't know, but but you have to be intentional about who you're connected with. So you have to just prioritize like certain folks, I guess.
I would like to add on that emailing is also great because you could just send it, and then whenever they receive it, and then when you'll just feel like this accumulation of energy, and then you can call someone, because right now with the whole pandemic, but that's useful if you're in different cities, if you can't meet up, but preferably in person is always better than over the phone. And as far as like keeping in touch with other um, network participants, you could also send out a holiday card or just a simple card like, hey, how are you doing? Right? Just not kind of selling yourself, but just to keep them uh, aware that you're still here, right? That's the best way I could say it. And when you might not have to do that if you see them face to face, but if you don't, then it might be nice to say, hey, how are you doing?
Sweet, thank you all. I see next with the raised hand, Jonathan Tapia. If you want to go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question, here is your space.
Okay, yeah. I was wondering, how do you reach out to people after you receive their contact information? And how major of a factor is time when reaching out to them? Because I find it like awkward to like, after I receive like, after I finish like networking and then like a long time has passed, I'm like, can I still contact them, or is that like weird or awkward? So I was just wondering, how do you go on about that?
I can start us off with this one. So whenever I get people's business cards at events, I try to reach out to them as soon as I can. Maybe it's the next day, maybe it's like the following Monday. But number one, I always want to include where I met them. Number two, I want to say something about how we connected, like, oh, hey, April, it was great to meet you at this event. I enjoyed talking with you about XYZ. Was wondering if, and then try to follow up with like, was wondering if we can meet up again sometime. Let me know when you're available for coffee or for a Zoom or whatnot. So I feel like that works really well when it's close, soon after you've met them. If you've waited for what you feel is a long time, I don't think you should be shy to reach out still. Like even if it's like a few months, a few years, And I think it's still worth reaching out to that person again, but still use that same way of connecting who you are with them, right? Because let's say you wait like 2 years and you're like, hey, maybe I should reach out to this person. You might be able to jog their memory and say, hey, I met you a couple of years ago at blah, blah, blah event. We talked about this and I was wondering if we could reconnect. And usually if the person is a nice person, they will get back to you. And if they don't get back to you, then maybe it's not a connection that's worth pushing for at that time. What are your thoughts, Ken and April?
I would agree with what Jennifer said. Me personally, I would reach out as soon as possible because it's fresh in their head, right? There's not that awkward, oh, hey, by the way, I was at this event 5 years ago and I was the guy in the striped shirt. Do you remember me? Right? Like, it's easier if you do it earlier. Now, I also agree with Jennifer that if you feel inclined for whatever reason, just say, hey, I'm super busy with UC Santa Cruz. I just graduated. I found your business card. Like, be honest. Going back to what we were saying, be authentic, right? And just say, hey, I just totally lost your business card, forgot, found it right now. I'm still interested. What are you up to? This is what I'm up to. Can we be up to the same thing? Easy.
Yeah, I totally agree with what you guys both said. And I would add that if you do have a request for that person, you can make it specific. Say, I was really interested in what you said about molecular biology and that specific topic. And, I'd love to hear more about what you've been working on. Do you have some time to spend to talk to me about that?
Sweet. Thanks, April. Moving on to the next hand I see up, Lourdes or Nelas. If you want to go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, I just wanted to ask whether any of you guys are first generation college graduates, and if so, how did that impact you, like networking with people, finding people to network? Because I know for myself, I'm a first generation college student, and I'm like entering college having no idea how to network or even find people to network with. And this event is like amazing. It's like an amazing first step for me, but I know there's a lot more to come.
I'll start us off. I am a first generation college student. It was hard because my family was focusing on survival, right? There was no one to help me with homework. So I really took advantage of the tutoring, right? The resources, you have to use it. I didn't have the privilege of having someone who already walked that path and then I'm following after them, right? I'm like using the lantern as we're walking, right? But it's also an exciting opportunity for you because you're creating a legacy, right? You're paving the way for those to come after you, right? One day someone will ask you, hey, how did you do it? How did you get to where you're at? You'll sit in our position and you could share the way and you could show them the map and like, here, X marks your spot. Just follow this path. And I think the number one thing I would suggest is going back to what we were saying is just knowing who you are. I think for me, my strongest thing was my family. Every time I felt like I was bogged down or I felt like I wasn't, if I had imposter syndrome or if I wasn't doing enough, I just thought about them, what they sacrificed to allow me to have this opportunity, right? Where, wow, I'm wasting all this time and money to go party, or I could get a career and, right? Like when you put it like that, it's a no-brainer, right? But it's just having that authenticity with yourself, right? And it can be a gift and a curse because sometimes family holds you back, but also family can also propel you as well. So just be aware of that. Don't limit yourself, but also be truthful to yourself, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, I love that, Ken. And I would add that Santa Cruz does have first gen student resources, and there are a lot of other probably first gen students that have the same questions that want resources as well. And I think it would be great for you to connect with that group too, just to see what resources they have for you, and to just get connected with other first gen students too. I don't have that information, but I can look for it, and probably Angie or Kaz knows more about that too.
I think along the same lines, beyond campus, when you get out after graduation, there are other groups of folks who support one another as well. So my stepdaughter is a first generation college student, and she and I were texting the other day, and she's half Filipino, and I know of a group called Lead Filipino that they put on this program every year for college students. It's called Fly Pinay's. And I told her, like, these people who run the program, the people who are engaged, can really support you as you go through your college journey. And I know that she's very privileged to have someone like me in her family at this point, but those programs are out there, and they're available to folks. And I think part of the benefit of networking is to learn about supports like that out in the community. Because it can be scary to be out there and not knowing what you're doing, or maybe not know of all of the resources available. But as you begin to talk with more people, you start to learn about more resources, like what April shared. I didn't know about that. I didn't know about AAPIRC until April told me about it. So yeah, I mean, be authentic and be open and curious and ask if you want support. People are always willing to help, I find. And it's really nice to receive that support once you put yourself out there.
Sweet, thank you. I'm gonna pass the mic over to Nathan Pon. You wanna go ahead and unmute yourself?
Okay, can you hear me? Okay. For me, I'm finding the circumstances of the pandemic has made it difficult for me to network. Do you have any advice for overcoming, getting around that?
I think one of the things is that you're here today and you asked a question in front of many, many people, that shows that you have the willingness and eagerness and enthusiasm, and you want to learn. And I think, just having people hear your voice in these types of Zoom calls is really important, to get yourself out there. And if there's someone in a Zoom call that's a big group one like this, and they're specifically saying things that you're interested in or want to know more about, you can either send them a message directly, or, I know, for example, we're going to share our contact info at the end of this event. But, at the end of an event, a similar event like this, if someone doesn't share their info, you can maybe contact the organizer and say, hey, I was really interested in what this person said. Could you ask that person if they would be willing to share their contact info with me so I can connect with them? Something like that.
Okay.
Sweet. And we'll move on to another hand I see in the chat, Aztec, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hey folks, good afternoon. Buenas tardes. My name is Raul Gonzalez. That's my colonial name, but I like to go by Aztec. I just want to say first and foremost, thank you so much, April, Jennifer, Ken. Really inspirational. And April, I love your background, your poster, Bruce Lee. He's one of my mentors. Yeah, my question is this: how do you stay motivated, and also how do you make your? Because I have a lot of imagination, and I hope everyone does too. How do we bring them to life? That's what I have visions, but I it's hard for me to bring them to life. I'm not sure if folks have, but yeah, and just how to stay motivated. That's my question to you folks.
I'll start. You have to ask yourself why, right? Why are you doing this? Because if it's just money, okay, what happens after you get the money, right? There's this exercise we did in theater. We just asked ourselves why, right? Oh, you're going to UC Santa Cruz. Why? So I could get a degree. Why? So I could get paid. Why? And then eventually it gets really deep, and you ask yourself these questions like, I don't know why. And that's where the growth happens. That's where you start developing your motivation, right? Because it has to be something bigger than you. Because if it's just getting the bright, shiny red car, what happens once you get the bright, shiny red car? You stop? I don't know, maybe, maybe not, right? And the grind never stops. Let me tell you that. It didn't stop in UC Santa Cruz. It hasn't stopped yet. And I don't think it will stop, right? You just got to keep working on it. And that's the beauty of it, right? There's always room for improvement. And in terms of your imagination, I definitely agree with you. And one thing I would say is write them all down. I have like a little idea book, right? You write it down. And then you take your idea, maybe 1 hour a week, 1 hour a day, whatever you have time for, and break that into smaller parts, right? So if you want this idea, how do you get there, right? And you eventually go like this, kind of like a web, a step ladder, right? And do it, right? And then set time every day to work on your goals. And then goes back to why. Why are you working on those goals, right? So it's a cycle, right? Once you achieve that goal, then what, right? So I hope that's helpful for you. That's what has helped me, and it changes. Just don't be so stuck on something. It changes as you change. Things change, and sometimes you just throw the book away and get a new book, and that's okay. You know, yeah, that's life.
I love what you're saying, Ken, and I totally agree. I also want to add, like, it goes back to my people's, like, the things that I feel really passionate about and want to learn more about. I look and see, like, who's doing the work, who is it that I could learn from. And what I think is so awesome is, and it's something that happens pretty often, and it motivates the F out of me, is like race equity work, for example. It's hard AF. And I remember hearing about this woman who is doing amazing things. I see these articles that she writes, I see the work that she's doing, and I'm like, oh man, I wonder if I could ever be like her. And you know what I did? I reached out to her. And you know what? I've been texting with her. So, it's been like 1.5 years now since I first met her. And I can truly say now that I'm friends with her, which feels really great. And I told her just the other day, I'm like, I'm still starstruck when I talk with you, like it's amazing to me. And when at first I felt like, oh man, I could never like be like her or be friends with her, just starting to open up myself to meeting new people like her and being real true to myself about what I want to do. She got that from me. She was able to see, oh, you really do care about this stuff. And I can assume that's why she wants to stay connected with me, and that kind of thing starts to happen when you really are being authentic and doing the things that you really care about and that fulfill you. People will start to notice that. And when you start noticing that in other people and connecting with them, I feel like it's such a big motivation. And it helps to not just keep you aligned with your own vision and goals, but it makes you think of other ways to get there, so I hope that was helpful.
Gracias.
Sweet, thank you. I saw more questions pop up in the chat, but unfortunately we're out of time. But don't worry, we're gonna share all of the panelists' contact information with y'all. So if you have more questions, you can go ahead and practice your networking skills there. But at this point, I'm gonna hand the mic back over to Kaz to close us out.
Apologies, on my screen and my second screen just like started blacking out, like went in blank. I was hoping, yeah, okay, so I fixed it. We're good. I wanted to share the slide because one of the things that we were gonna do was prompt you all with some questions for reflection in breakout groups. But I think some of these questions would be good for y'all to think about and practice on networking, like Angie said, and reaching out to the panelists themselves. So let me pop up the screen here. All right, so Oh my goodness, my screen is doing that again. Okay, what is one thing that you can relate to about each of the panelists? What was one or two things from the panelists that resonated with you? And what are questions that you'd still have for the panelists? So if you have ideas for any of these prompts, or you want to reach out to any of the panelists and continue the conversation, I invite you to take notes of that now and reach out to them, because on the next slide, we have their information. So their contact information is there, their emails, and a couple of folks utilize LinkedIn too, which I encourage you all to do as students. If you haven't already developed a LinkedIn page, quick show of hands, like reaction with the video chats. Like if you've created a LinkedIn page for yourself, or if you created a profile yourself, go ahead and put your hands up in the chat. All right, and on the chat, but your video screen, your reactions. All right, there we go. That works too. Yes, yes, I love seeing that. So if you haven't done that yet, something to consider. But I'm leaving the emails up here. We can also put that in the chat afterwards, but I'm going to move on to the next slide. So if you haven't taken note of our panelists' emails below, yeah, we'll put that back in the chat. Again, I want to thank Angie for hosting and facilitating. Y'all give your shouts out to Angie, please. Thank you to Career Success for working with us, and Alumni Engagement for bringing our great panelists here. Thank you to Jen, April, and Ken for being amazing, awesome, engaging panelists. Shout out to them. And I wanted to shout out a couple events that are upcoming. So AAPIRC, if this is your first time learning about the Asian American Pacific Islander Resource Center, or you're not familiar, we do have another event tomorrow, and that's with another alum screening their master's project. It's a doc screening about the Vietnamese shrimpers and elderly farmers in New Orleans, and understanding their lives and how they relate their past lives to their current lives and to the work that they do. So we have that event coming up. We also have, unfortunately, a little bit overlapping too. The African American Resource and Cultural Center is hosting their 3CS, or the Communities of Color Career Service workshop, Identity in the Workplace. So that's another event that's happening tomorrow as part of the series. Again, so thank you all for being here today as part of the series. And then we also have upcoming events from Career Success, talking about authentic stories from slugs and tech, virtual computer engineering career and internship fair, public service and helping professions city year panel. So those are all events that are happening. We can toss the links in the chat as well to those events if you are interested. But again, if you want more information from about things that we're all doing, the best way is to get signed up to our newsletters, to follow us on our social media accounts, and engage with us that way. Also, speaking of like networking and leading to the potential to leading opportunities, if any of y'all are versed in digital communications, like if you are very familiar with Discord and Zoom, or other digital media tools, AAPIRC is actually looking for a digital media intern for the rest of the school year, especially that we're still remote and virtual. So someone to like help run events like this. Please do hit me up. I will put my own email in the chat as well if you are interested. Second.
And Kaz, can I mention the Alumni Council?
Yes, go for it. I was just about to pass it.
Okay, thanks, Kaz. So I'm part of the UC Santa Cruz Alumni Council, and the Alumni Council is a group of alumni who are passionate about UC Santa Cruz and who continue to support the university, both financially and also with their time, contributing to the longevity of the university and its programming and its students' experiences at UC Santa Cruz. And I'll put a link in the chat to our homepage. Eventually, all of you who are students will become alumni. So it's a great way to stay connected to UC Santa Cruz after you graduate. And if you're part of a student organization, we have a special project fund for students who are interested in organizing events aimed towards students to interact with alumni in a meaningful way. So there's funding for events like that, and that's sponsored by the Alumni Council.
Thanks, April.
Yeah.
And one more thing before we start wrapping up and closing out. Like all the other 3CS events, if you all fill out this post-event survey that we have, you will be, and if you put your name and contact information on the survey, you'll be eligible to enter for a iPad raffle. So please do give us your feedback. And let me go get the survey. It's in another link. Yeah, thank you all for your presence and being here through these busy and all virtual times. Appreciate the energy you all brought and gave back to the panelists as they give their energy to you all. And please do follow up. I have the link right here. Okay. There it is. Whew. And then it'll also be sent out via email too, since you all registered for the event. You have it'll be sent to your email if you can't click the link here if you missed it, because I know some people took off already too. All right, you all. Well, any other final comments from our panelists, Angie, Taylor, or Rhonda, or Valerie?
Thanks for having us today.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel so inspired seeing all these really motivated students.
All right, one more time, y'all. Put ones in the chat as a thank you to all the panelists and the folks that came through today to provide this workshop for y'all. Ones in the chat if you can do that as you head out. Y'all have a good night. Thank you, thank you. Oh, look at that. Yeah, that's beautiful.
That's so cool.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care. Have a good evening.